It is indeed a pleasure to have this privilege to play here for you. And we intend to give you a very fine program, so just settle back, relax, and enjoy the moment.
Mic check, out of focus. Let me focus real quick. Can't wait till I upgrade to a DSLR. Who this? Ronnie Rat. Good morning. I'm in my in focus. I was trying to be back so folks can see my t-shirt. We're on looted land, getting ready, pre-gaming for Thingstaken. Psych, we don't celebrate Thingstaken. What up, Megzy? What up, Ronnie Rat? Is it Ronnie Rat? I always mess up people's names. Hey, little mama, how you doing? How you doing? Yeah. So today, first of all, I'm gonna back things up similar to what I did last week. There was a lot of news yesterday evening and yesterday afternoon. A lot of really sad news broke with the Malcolm X, his daughter. And I just want to kind of start off probably with a little bit like just holding space for people who are impacted by yesterday's headlines. Also, if you're following the trial of the three men who are on trial for killing Ahmaud Arbery. Yesterday you saw the defense, I guess, doing their closing statements, and it was vicious to watch. I tried not to watch that trial live as much as possible, but then I got like drawn into it and really started wanting to watch it at the end of last week. And yesterday I turned it on live on one of these 24-hour news channels, and just to see these men, their defense team constantly dehumanize and attack Black people and attack Ahmaud Arbery, and make him this vicious person who was unarmed, running around a neighborhood, just trying to live life, and he was hunted down and murdered in cold blood. And just to hear the defense, those three men, various participants within their defense team, take to the podium and use such dehumanizing language and gross tactics to continuously show how racist they are. And it's really, really, really sad. So I wanted to hold space for people who were dealing with that, hearing that grotesque comment about Ahmaud Arbery's feet. Again, Malika Shabazz passing away yesterday. Just wanted to hold space for that. I'm going to switch it up. But again, today's live stream, welcome. Today's live stream is I'm going to focus on Black Indigeneity and Indigenous sovereignty. We're going to talk about the roots of some Indigenous history here in the South, in the Carolinas. We're going to lift up Chickasaw, Black Seminole, the Lumbee Tribe in North Carolina, Catawba. We're going to lift up a few I guess tribes, or as they were historically recognized. We're going to do that, and we're going to also talk about how that history has always intersected with Black bodies here. And a lot of folks don't understand Black indigeneity as much as they could. A lot of folks don't understand the phrase indigenous sovereignty. And so what I'm hoping to do is to kind of continue that conversation with y'all. Good morning, Same Facade. Good to see you again. B-Man, what's up? Yeah, so hopefully, who's this? Hey. Okay. What can what is it? K Shara? Look, how can I give me a name that I can call you? Thank you for joining. Good morning. Wait, that's hold up. Y'all gotta forgive me. I know, like, I interact with y'all more so on like Instagram. Hold up. Hey, Joni, good to see you, Joni. Good to see you. Let me see. It's like I deal with y'all either in my inbox or or in other places. Hey, Noah Jokes. Noah, thank you for the bits yesterday. I appreciate you. Until the coffee. Oh, and so yesterday I wasn't caffeinated. Today I did enjoy B-Man. Yeah. Okay, B-Man. I already got that. That's cool. I know exactly what you just dropped. That link I know. Is B-Man, before I even say something, is that dealing with Black Indigeneity or how Black culture intersects with native history? Let me know. If it doesn't, I'm not clicking it because I don't. What the fuck is a bit? Noah, you could drop in there. What's a bit? That's a way for you to also look. There's supposed to be ways for you to to cheer on people, and I'm supposed to enable certain features. I haven't done that yet, but bits are another way for you to support the live stream. So you can buy 200 bits. It's not $200, but I'm gonna dig more into it because I know I'm supposed to enable some of these features. But B-Man, thank you. I had me a matcha latte this morning, and I made it with your honey. It was delicious. It was the best matcha latte. The best matcha latte that I had. But yeah, it's like a little tip. But I'm supposed to enable certain features and whatnot, and I don't do that for y'all, and I got to. But back to what I want to focus on today. Thank you so much for the support. That just reminds me, this conversation around bit. Yeah, Christy, that's what it was. Christy. Yeah. I knew you, Christy. I was looking. Hey, Christy, I know you. As soon as I saw the abbreviation, I'm like, oh, wait, who is this? This is yeah. But anyway, today we want to center Indigenous sovereignty. We want to lift up the work contributions of Indigenous folks. We also want to talk about Black solidarity with Indigenous communities historically and in contemporary times. We want to have that conversation. Thank you so much for cheering me on, Noah. You're amazing. If you like this content, please consider supporting what I do. If you're not a patron on Patreon, please hustle on over there. When I switch up the screen, you'll see the link for Patreon in the bottom left corner. Let me see if I point. No, it's this way. You'll see it in the bottom left corner. Please support this, even $1 a month. Even if you've already been giving here on Twitch, $1 a month. What Patreon does is help me plan. So Patreon being in this monthly, I can plan. So I see how many subbies I have, or how many patrons I have, and that can really help me plan around a lot of things. And it's what I can kind of bank on in terms of the support, the financial support. It's just a more sustainable way, I guess, of showing your support. Even if it's $1 a month, don't feel like, well, I really want to give Mika $20 a month. That's cool. I want you to give $20 a month too if you could, but $1, $5 a month, and then you can always, no strings attached. Look, we get this. I get the relationship. Sometimes we got more casual relationships up in here, right? I'm okay with a casual relationship. I'm okay. I'm okay with a 3-month caprice. We can just do this. It could be a tryst, but any support you give is cool. All right. For those who are on lockdown with me, for those who are ride or dies forever, you know what I mean? That we ain't going nowhere. Y'all can still give the way y'all been giving. Y'all been holding me down. But for those who are like, I don't know, $1 a month Patreon. That's cool. And you see the homies up here trying to really lift that up. And thank you so much, Noah. When you give, it inspires other people to give. So I appreciate you. Yeah. It's so good to see y'all. So we're going to talk about it. What I do want to do, you know what? Let me just do it. What I would like to do is to set the intention for today's live stream. This is really loud. We'll turn that down. Yeah. All right. Want to set the intention today as we reflect on the loss right here. This is just too important to not lift up. This is Malika Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X. When Malcolm X was assassinated, Betty Shabazz, the late Betty Shabazz, the late great Betty Shabazz, was carrying twins. And so as she was in the Audubon Ballroom with her husband, having to bear witness to his vicious murder, thank you, B-Man, she was pregnant with 2 babies. And so when you kind of make that connection that she's one of the 2, let me make this a little larger because I know y'all can't see it. This is really sad. I'll read a little bit. This is CNN. I just grabbed the first bit I could that was going to give us at least as much facts. I would love to source. Next time I'll source a Black news source, and I think we can once we get back to video. But I'm just going to read from this piece. A daughter, because Malcolm X had many daughters, but a daughter of slain Black civil rights activist Malcolm X, Malika Shabazz, died Monday. The New York Police Department told CNN. Shabazz, y'all, was 56 years old. She was found unconscious by her daughter at her home in Brooklyn, according to NYPD. Police said the death appears to be due to natural causes at this time. And I learned about it because I saw a tweet from Bernice King, the daughter of another slain civil rights activist, Martin Luther King. And here they mentioned that Bernice King, daughter of the late Martin Luther King Jr., offered condolences. All right, so I'll go to that tweet. This is the tweet where I learned about this. I went to bed hella early yesterday. I was very exhausted. I want to say thank you to everyone yesterday in my life that gave me a little grace. I'm just been running since Wednesday, literally, and I was very tired. So to wake up and to see this tweet, it was just like, oh man, it really like knocked me over. Bernice says, I'm deeply saddened by the death of Malika Shabazz. My heart goes out to her family and the descendants of Dr. Betty Shabazz and Malcolm X. Dr. Shabazz was pregnant with Malika and her twin sister Malak when brother Malcolm was assassinated. Be at peace, Malika. And see, this is a picture of Betty, the late Betty Shabazz, holding the twins here. Super sad. So I wanted to hold space for Black people just impacted by injustice and loss. It's the holidays. Some people are dealing with just varying levels of loss. What we saw happen in Wisconsin at that parade really impacted me as well. The senseless loss of life at the hands of some individual who just was hell-bent on living a destructive life, it seems, showing a complete disregard for life, human life. I think what happened at the closing arguments with the with the trial involving, or the trial regarding the Ahmaud Arbery murder, it's really unsettling. So I just want to hold space for people right now as we get into the holidays, as we get on a plane, get in our car, get on the train, all of that. Just want to say I see you, I hear you. It's a lot going on right now. A lot of uncertainty. We saw what happened in the airport in Atlanta. While no one was harmed by what happened, it was disruptive. It's just a lot going on. So people have a lot of anxieties and fears right now, traveling with COVID, resurgence of COVID in certain states. Yeah, there's a lot. So I want to say, we what we're not going to do is focus on consumerism and just consumption and buying things. We really want to set the intention that this is about, I hope when you sit down on Thursday, it's about family. Now, I don't observe Thingstaken in the traditional sense, but of course I'll be with my mom and my dad enjoying a meal and watching football on standard definition television in their house. But I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for having seen my twin brother and my sister-in-law, their children, my two nieces. I'm very, 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 very grateful, and I'll be sharing what I'm grateful for on Thursday, like you will. But I'm not going to focus on consumerism and not going to focus on all the things that, that we're seeing on TV. Supply chain really, it will impact. It's impacting a lot of us here. I don't want to downplay supply chain issues because I have a lot of small business followers or small business owners who follow me, and I acknowledge how some of this is so disruptive. But what's getting lost in the supply chain conversation is that, they put this anxiety, they try to inject this anxiety into the mainstream news cycle about, oh, well, you might not get that toy you want, you might not get that guitar. That's not what Christmas is about. That's not what the holidays should be about. It should be about something else and about community. And I want to just not be pious or self-righteous or sanctimonious, but I just want to remind y'all that the real reason behind a lot of this is something deeper, something more meaningful. Whether you are a spiritual person, whether you just are a person who just cares about your community, the holiday should not be about what you can buy. And if you can't get to your family for whatever reason this holiday season, I want to tell you that I see you, and just reach out if you need anything. Reach out to somebody you love, someone you're in community with, right? Same facade, you're saying I'm more worried about people getting the things they need to live, not gifts. Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Here we go. Let me go ahead and ban you. Okay. Yeah. I banned them because that was crazy. I don't know what that was. All right. So, oh yeah, the bots be having crazy names. So look, if the bots go crazy, I'm gonna turn it to subscriber only chat. And so sorry if you're not subscribed to the channel, then you won't be able to chat. But if the bots come crazy, I'll do that. But right now, past couple days we've been able to swat a couple out or even have some discourse with some trolls. I don't mind that. That guy yesterday, was it Rainy Dog? That one, I'll do back and forth and ask you to leave. But the bots, how that is. Thanks again for B-Man for dropping the Patreon link. Noah Jokes, you just dropped in the chat. Imagine you get a bunch of bots to subscribe. Oh God. Then I just had to say goodbye. No. Why would you even speak that into life? Oh, good bots. Oh, good bots. Good bots. I'm sorry. It's a lag. Yeah. Okay. No, I don't want Rainy Dog to come back. I don't want him to come back at all. I'm not saying I want him back. No. And the thing is, some of y'all, I really, hopefully, Allie, look now. Sometimes y'all suggest that y'all want me to go back and forth with people. Y'all don't understand. For me, I'm gonna speak for myself. That ain't fun. I know some people make a whole living off that on Twitter. That ain't fun. Going back and forth with somebody who's hell bent on denying your humanity. All right. Let me lift up real quick. Let me lift up again, setting the attention for why we're here. Let me pull up. This is not original. This is not my art. This is art that I found from the Smithsonian's, their Native American, I don't want to say arm, but the Smithsonian Institute has all these very different interests, so different cultures, different type of ethnic identities, right? So there was a recent event, which we're going to talk about, that used this graphic, and what it does, it says, "Together we lift the sky," right? So it's emphasizing Black solidarity and Indigenous sovereignty, how the two do not have to be at odds with each other, right? Together we lift the sky. And I really want this to guide this conversation moving forward, okay? Yeah, I know, Dr. Claw. Ugh. Shut up, Dr. Claw. That's a funny joke. No, yeah. I don't want him to come back, Allie. That's all I was trying to say. I don't want him to come back. So together we lift the sky. Yeah. It's great. It's powerful. I'm gonna give it credit. I'm gonna credit where it came from and use it today, either in a newsletter or on Instagram. But this was just so powerful, and we'll get into this conversation. It actually was facilitated. It was recorded and it's available on YouTube. All right, so let me take off the lo-fi and let's get to it. One thing I wanted to hit up first was a local headline. Let me see if I got it. Here we go. I want to do this first. Keep it local. This is Charleston. We're going to get into Black Indigeneity, Indigenous Sovereignty. We're about to get into it, y'all. But first, this breaking news from yesterday here locally. Charleston Dock Workers Union elect a new leadership amid ongoing labor dispute. All right, this is featured in the Post and Courier. Please excuse the fact that I'm not using my library card to access today's paper. It's just this one article. All right, so for the first time in nearly a quarter of a century, the local chapter of the union that represents dock workers at the Port of Charleston will have new leadership. Y'all know how important this union is to Charleston. This is a huge concentration of Black power. I do not know, let me repeat, I do not know the dynamics of this dispute. I was trying to get some information, but I really wasn't trying as hard as I probably could have. So I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I just know that there's been a lot of beef for a couple years now that I've been privy to, and I'll reach out and I'll find out more about this. But I wanted to at least put this on your radar. So Charles Brave Jr., a longtime South Carolina labor leader, and y'all remember him if you watched the ILA documentary that we watched, right? About the Charleston Five, right? He was in here. So Charles Brave Jr., I believe he was a longtime South Carolina labor leader and a member of the ILA Local 1422 unseated Ken Riley in an election last week for president of ILA's Charleston branch. Ben Flowers Jr. was elected vice president. Both men will take office on December 2nd. Vote tallies were not immediately available. So it says Brave has been president of the AFL-CIO of South Carolina and has worked with the local ILA chapter since 1976. So this is not a stranger to the group. All right, Flowers is the son of Benjamin Flowers Sr., who was president of the ILA chapter for nearly 2 decades before losing to Riley. The leadership change comes at a contentious time for the union, which is navigating a dispute with the state's Port Authority over jobs at the new Leatherman terminal in North Charleston. And I'm gonna leave it there because I want to get back to the crux of this discussion, but I wanted to put this on your radar because this is a huge moment. This union is very powerful still, even if leadership has been fractured and all that. Very powerful, and I'm going to watch this because I really don't want them to lose their power. But we don't know what this power change, this leadership change portends for the union. But we're going to keep our eye on it, and I'm going to invite someone who actually knows more about the contours of the story to join me. Hopefully, right? Yeah. No, not that one. Yeah, they don't. But that one, that union is been. Yeah. Were you following me when we watched the Charleston Five? So I just it's on the IGTV tab of my Instagram account, so you can go back and watch the documentary there. But it's the documentary is right here. We this is by Penn State University Media Commons, right? It's 6 years old. Not even 1,000 views on this video. It's very powerful. Yeah, it's the fight to free the Charleston Five. This gives you the whole history of that union here. Well, it doesn't give you the whole history. It gives you a whole history of how 600 police came to beat up on like a couple dozen of Black men fighting for, engaged in a labor dispute. Okay, yeah, just go back and watch that. We've already kind of covered that. Okay, here we go. Hold up. All right, here we go. Get to it. So when I was on OM and as a podcaster, I would create everything's taken. I would create some programming centering not just Black people and Black people's interactions with Indigenous cultures here in the South. I just specifically tried to talk about indigeneity because that conversation does exist here. We do have institutions here, like our local colleges, USC specifically, that lift up the nations, the native nations that were here before us. Again, I'm wearing a T-shirt today, reminding us all that we're on looted land, right? So there are many institutions that have this conversations about Native culture. But what I don't see enough of is the Black and Native or the Black and Indigenous conversation, right? We don't have those conversations. Thank you, Brianne. I appreciate you. All right. So what I wanted to do, I curated some content. Some is new, some is old. That is very important. But I want to kick things off with, in the vein of that picture that I pulled up. Let me pull it up again. In the vein of, together we lift the sky. In the vein of Black solidarity with Indigenous folks and Black solidarity with Indigenous trials and tribulations, I think it's important to talk about how Indigenous tribes have historically stood up against white supremacy as well. So we're going to talk about slave revolts. We're going to talk about Black Seminoles. That's something I haven't done on a mic check 1 2 1 2. And a lot of this history, y'all, is bittersweet, right? That's how it works here. Every time we take 2 steps forward, this country just keeps knocking us back 3 steps, right? We had the racial reckoning of the summer of 2020, and then Biden gets in office, and he basically is just continuing to promote many of the policies that Trump had in place. We're not really seeing too much of a difference, right? More importantly, Reconstruction, right? Reconstruction. You see us making great strides. Black men are elected into Congress and holding all these high profile political seats. And then what we have after that, we have redemption, and then the terrorism that came with the Jim Crow, and how Jim Crow spread from the South throughout the rest of the country, which came with a lot of carnage, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of murder, a lot of lynching at the hands of white folks in power. And so when we talk about this history, though, we forget to lift up how it intersects with Indigenous life. I'm talking a lot. Let me just go ahead and get to the content. So this is something I used in my giving project, specifically because it deals with the Lumbee Tribe. The Lumbee Tribe, the Lumbee people are indigenous to the Carolinas. The footprint, I believe, is more specific to North Carolina, but this story really is important to share. This is like a 2-minute video, so we're gonna watch a lot of these videos in its entirety. A lot of 8-minute, 9-minute. Okay. Oh, let me turn it up. All right. Boom. This is you'll get it.
School, we learn about
this is the battle. If you follow me, you know about this. This is the Battle of Hayes Pond, when the Lumbee defeated the Ku Klux Klan.
U.S. history, the Battle of Lexington, the Battle of Gettysburg, the Battle of Normandy. But what about the Battle of Hayes Pond? It's not in your textbooks. There's only one small statue about it in the whole world.
Sound familiar?
It was a battle in the centuries-long war over white supremacy, pitting armed, working-class Native people against the Ku Klux Klan. It took place in small Robeson County in North Carolina in 1958. The KKK, under Grand Dragon James Catfish Cole, was on a campaign of terror and killings across the state. They targeted Black activists and quote-unquote troublemakers, as well as interracial couples. Many North Carolina cops were suspected KKK members themselves, and so they did nothing about it. First, Robert F. Williams led an armed defense against Cole and the KKK in Monroe County.
I just want to say, again, we're going to have a live stream. I'm not pro, I hope it doesn't scare, don't matter if it scares white people, but we're going to talk about armed rebellion or armed defense against white vigilantism, right? We're going to talk about that because there's books on this, right? There's books on that. I almost wanted to talk about it yesterday, but this image reminds me, because this image I seen this image first in a book about how Black folk will arm themselves against white supremacy, like the Black Panthers modeled. But even before the Black Panthers, Black people had to take up the shit. Look at Tulsa. Black people fought back at every turn. Sometimes we just were outnumbered and outgunned.
The Klan then targeted Lumbee people in Robeson County, calling them mongrels because of intermarriage. Burning crosses at the house of a Lumbee woman and a white man, they put out an ad for another rally 5 days later in the Lumbee town of Maxton.
So get
the
this.
Lumbee responded.
Get this.
If the KKK can bring
the Klan did all this because of interracial marriage. They did all of this because of interracial marriage. Like imagine how much and then when you think about the Tulsa Massacre, that started because the elevator may or may not elevator jolted and a black man fell into a white woman. You know, like the shit, the amount of bloodshed that white supremacy will set into motion behind some bullshit.
Their weapons, why can't we? Even the local sheriff advised Catfish Cole that his life would be in danger. On the night of the rally, only 50 racists showed up and 500 Lumbee. The Lumbee encircled the Klan rally. They grabbed the Klan's amplifiers. That triggered the offensive. The Lumbee charged and opened fire. The racists were quickly overwhelmed and panicked. Cole and his crew ran away towards the swamp of Hayes Pond. The sheriff had 2 plainclothes cops in their demonstration who fired tear gas to protect the racists. The Lumbee group only dispersed after rounding up the Klan's weapons. The Klan fled the Robeson County that night and would not have a presence there for decades. Catfish Cole became a liability to the local ruling class. He was prosecuted and jailed for inciting a riot. It was the end of his career as a white supremacist leader. Right now, only the Lumbee people regularly commemorate the Battle of Hayes Pond and the heroes who risked their lives to drive out white supremacy. But shouldn't we all?
Yeah, good question. Y'all, that Catfish dude, that dude, you know about him, right? D, thank you for that, sharing that. So D, you said that full disclosure, your DNA is in these pics. You're sure? I guess you're talking about, is it because of the North Carolina roots or just whiteness in general? All right. So this is James Catfish Cole. Okay. The leader of the Ku Klux Klan of North Carolina and South Carolina. He was a grand dragon, y'all, here in South Carolina. Okay. Yeah. See, look at this right here. Klan defeated by Black armed guard. This is great. Again, this is in North Carolina. Catfish Cole reminds me of like KKK Corey or Bear Spray Bessinger. Like kept trying to do shit and expand his leadership. But like he's total buns, like total loser, like for real. So let me see. So yeah, he attended Granger High School in Kinston, North Carolina. Yada yada yada. And I'm not going to focus on him, but I want to see this story right here. Defeated by a Black armed guard, Dr. Albert E. Perry, a Black doctor in Monroe, North Carolina, was presumed to be financing the local chapter of the NAACP, right? And was consequently he received numerous death threats from the Klan. In 1957, Robert F. Williams, president of local chapter NAACP, was granted a charter from the National Rifle Association to form a local affiliate. Yep. Okay. Which Williams dubbed the Black Armed Guard. So that's what that was referenced to in that video. That was the reference. So dubbed the Black Armed Guard. This is when the NRA was like okay with black people getting guns until I think Reagan, the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers kind of changed all that. Oh, wait, y'all want the Second Amendment y'all want to protect yourself against white supremacy? Oh, hold up. We might not. But anyway, the NRA let them do an affiliate chapter, Black Armed Guard. The group was comprised of mostly World War II veterans and quickly began organizing for self-defense. And we're going to do a self-defense live stream next week because of the Ahmaud Arbery, the topic of Ahmaud Arbery and Kyle Rittenhouse, self-defense and all that other stuff. We're going to talk about that and hopefully have a more nuanced conversation about how to organize for self-defense. And again, I'm going to make that plea to younger organizers to please, because whatever the outcome of this trial that's going on right now, we have to organize and really be strategic about getting out there, given the political climate. You're not going to get sympathy if you're going out there. You're not going to get sympathy if they find you. Like, we got to be really, like, we have to ground our movement work in history and learn from some of these moments in history. Okay, so anyway, wanted to lift that up. Let's get back to Black indigeneity and indigenous sovereignty as we talk about how the two can exist, right? I'm a descendant of stolen people on stolen land, on looted land. So it's important to talk about how both can exist, how we can acknowledge and lift up indigenous culture and lift up the fact that we're on stolen land, and also fight for Black liberation. All right, so let's keep it in the South. Let's stay in the South. Let's talk about the Black history we don't get to learn about. And now this one, y'all gonna laugh at me. Y'all know I love me some historical romance. You know I love Beverly Jenkins. And I read her book Topaz a few months ago. And in Topaz, it's fictional, it's romantic, it's heated, it's all those things. But what I love about Beverly Jenkins' work, even though it's really sexy and fun to read, she creates these pieces with so much history. And in it, I literally learned more about Black Seminoles reading this romance novel than I have from a lot of other sources. That being said, like I guess the main male character, male protagonist, I don't know what you call it in a romance novel. I don't know if it's just protagonist. I don't know if it's cinnamon roll. I don't know. There's all these different terms. But that person, the main love interest, was Black and Seminole, and he would recount history that was actually true. So it was a mix of fiction and nonfiction within the book, right? So yeah. Thank you, Saint Facade. Thank you, got me. Thank you for continuing my thought from earlier. Yeah. You got me. Yeah, Joni, you said real quick. Joni, you said I think I said this before, but you went to school with several Lumbee people. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for dropping it in. But so let's talk about what I want to do is talk about Black Seminoles, because it was a slave revolt involved in this history. But also let me start back with we got to start with South Carolina first. So we'll start with my favorite. Y'all know I be digging in this presentation right here. So again, you'll hear me quote from this. This was when the 1619 Project launched, and they did this big 2+ hour live event where they talked to the contributors, the historians, the poets, the writers, the scholars. They talked to some of them, not all, some of the folks who actually helped to write the craft, the 1619 Project. And all through it is just so much South Carolina and so much Charleston. And this is one clip that I didn't share as much as I've shared the other clips, but this one is really important, right? Oh, you got some? Oh, you said, I gave, you got to get, wait. Yeah, you got to get some Beverly Jenkins books, Brianne, you got to. But let's lift up South Carolina history. And if you heard me mention that the first Underground Railroad didn't go north, it went south. If you heard me mention it, it's because I sourced it from this piece right here. And then I went on to research it and learn more about the Black Seminoles. So let's watch this.
Come back to some of those points in a minute, but Tahimba, can we talk about your selection?
This is Tahimba Jess.
And what it was about the Black Seminole story that appealed to you when you were looking at that list?
Well, I think the thing about the Black Seminoles is you're talking about really the idea that really the first Underground Railroad ran south. You're talking about folks in South Carolina bristling under slavery and deciding not to go north to the North Star, but to go south to Florida, which was at that time in a Spanish territory, and living there at first under Spanish dominion as Spanish citizens, and then when the Spanish left, staying there and communing with the Creek, and really
Creek, it's another tribe,
establishing really the largest and most successful slave revolt in the United States, which you're talking about.
Let me run that back. Oh, damn. I was trying to run it back gently. Hold up. Okay. Sorry if it went back too far. We'll see.
Folks in South Carolina bristling under slavery, and deciding not to go north to the North Star, but to go south to Florida, which was at that time in a Spanish territory, and living there at first under Spanish dominion as Spanish citizens, and then when the Spanish left, staying there and communing with the Creek, and really establishing really the largest and most successful slave revolt in the United States.
Come on.
Which you're talking about communities of hundreds of black folks and red folks living in Florida and fighting successive wars, three separate wars with generals and people like Abraham, Osceola, Juan Cavallo,
Osceola,
John Horse, fighting for
John Horse, we're going to talk about him.
And then signing a treaty with the United States, moving to Oklahoma, and then later on moving south of the border to Mexico, where some of them, their descendants still are today, in a little town called Nacimiento de los Negros, which is, it's just a fascinating story which runs all the way through American history up until today. Which I was upset that I did not find out about.
Nope. Come on.
I was being taught black history through, I mean, all the way through college, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what intrigued me.
Okay, so that intersects directly and specifically with black, you know, the enslaved black population, that history here in South Carolina. So this is something new to me. I didn't even cover this. I just found this and I thought this was really good. So let me rewind it. Yeah, this was from 2012. I'm surprised I didn't see this last year.
It's hard to imagine that Hollywood hasn't jumped all over this. You would think it would be box office gold because it's part Spartacus and part...
Ooh. Actually, Megzy, thank you. Megzy, before we get into the Black Seminole and slave revolt, right? The biggest successful slave revolt. Okay, go to map. Wait, go to map. You just dropped that in here. So for people to know, because I wanted to be, I was urged to be a little bit more mindful by some indigenous folks that I organized with over the last year or interviewed. I was encouraged to be more mindful about land acknowledgements and not just throw out what land we're currently on. I lift up, so this is a great resource. Thank you. Y'all check out this link right here. So she says, Megzy, you say, if you guys want to follow along with the territories, here's a native land map. Thank you. And B-Man, did you put a similar link too? I don't know if he's still listening, but no, go back. So you can see the footprint of where these nations existed, right? So this is largely South Carolina. I see here's the PD tribe, the Lumbee people up here. Here we got the Waccamaw, Chicora, right? More Chicora, the Siwi, the Santee, the Cusco. I lift up the Cusco a lot, especially when I go down to the Lolo country, right? But you see the PD is all over okay. Thank you for this. Here you got more Lumbee over here. Catawba, right? Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. Make sure. So when you do, sometimes when I present, I like to acknowledge what land I'm on. Usually I'm presenting because of COVID. I'm presenting from my living room, from right here. And so I like to acknowledge, but I like to know more. And that's what I hope today will do, was have you learn more about this history here in the South. It's funny because I was raised with more indigenous history when I was in New Jersey than I was in the South. And you would think it would be opposite, but not really, because you know how the Daughters of the Confederacy was doing. But anyway, not to say that I got better indigenous education. I just got a little bit more in New Jersey for various reasons. All right, so here, let's play this again. Black Seminoles and the largest slave revolt in U.S. history. And South Carolina features prominently in this history.
Braveheart and part Amistad and part Glory.
Thank you, Tom.
Dances with Wolves thrown in. A story decades long of oppression and freedom fighting. I don't understand why there hasn't been more attention to John Horse and the Black Seminoles.
John Horse?
But hopefully we can correct this.
The Forgotten Rebellion, Black Seminoles, and the largest slave revolt in U.S. history.
John Horse and the Black Seminoles deserve to be remembered for a number of reasons. They created the largest haven in the U.S. South for runaway slaves. They led the largest slave revolt in U.S. history. They secured the only emancipation of rebellious slaves prior to the U.S. Civil War, and they formed the largest mass exodus of slaves across the United States, moving from the Florida Everglades through Indian Territory, what would become Oklahoma, eventually locating in Mexico, where they secured title to their own land. It's a remarkable story. It's overlooked not just by filmmakers, it's not well known in popular culture, and in fact, it's been overlooked by historians of slavery, if you can believe it. In the early 18th century, two groups in particular fled the colonial South into Spanish Florida, into the Everglades. One of these groups were Seminoles, who were migrating from the various colonies, just trying to avoid white encroachment, basically, trying to move someplace that white colonists weren't. And the other group was runaway slaves, people who were fleeing and trying to create a free life for themselves. Both were welcome in Florida. And in fact, the Spanish crown offered runaway slaves their freedom if they would defend the land for the crown, for the Spanish.
For the Spanish.
So a mixed society emerged in the Everglades.
And I think that's why it's important to lift that up too, is because I think when we talk about the South, you know, I always reference the Black Belt and all that other stuff because of my identity as a Gullah Geechee descendant and descendant of the enslaved. I think it's important to talk about how multiracial these and multi-ethnic these areas look like, and how this is how Jim Crow and white supremacy worked to pit one faction against each other because they knew the strength was in the solidarity, right? And whether the Spanish was on some fuck shit or, you know, and all other stuff, that's a separate conversation, right? But the point is, there are people who banded together, indigenous and the enslaved, that banded together to fight for some type of liberty, right? It's really important. I'm going to keep playing it, but D, you said just started reading an Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. That's a good one. That's on my list. I shouldn't be adding any more books to my list, but that's on the list.
Intermarriage, family intermingling between these runaway slaves and the Seminoles.
I'm going to write that down so I don't forget. I think I already have that on my list.
Sanctioned Black free town in the North American continent was in the Spanish Florida Everglades. After the American Revolution, people living in the southern states didn't really like living that close to a large armed population of former slaves, particularly when they were in league with the local Native American nation, large armed group of free Seminoles.
Again, we're going to talk about how we, you know what I mean, that Second Amendment, even though this is way before the Second Amendment, like, we're going to talk about, well, not way before, yeah, we're going to talk about, like, the history of like, black and brown people taking up arms, like, and how that caused mass hysteria. And that's the reason why you want to know why Palmetto Armory stokes all these political fears and all this crazy messaging, especially around the holidays. It's because it's a fear of black people. It's a fear of brown people who will also defend their families and their land with, like, it's a fear. They got guns. We gotta get more guns, and we gotta be more out with our gun fanaticism. And we gotta carry crazy guns and long guns and say that they're for hunting. You know, good and goddamn well, you're not shooting up no deer, no goddamn AR-15
slaves.
Okay.
Particularly when they were in league with the local Native American nation, the large armed group of free Seminoles. And they knew that their own slaves felt free to run away and be harbored by this group. They knew that they were welcomed.
Thank you, Dee.
And so
Thank you.
From George Washington's administration on, there was questions of what do we do about the problem of the Florida Everglades. In 1818, this was James Monroe's administration, General Andrew Jackson actually moved into Florida, invaded it, not authorized to do so. He was actually pursuing justice against those who'd attacked Fort Scott in Georgia, but he did it anyway. He went into Florida and claimed it for the United States. When he seized the peninsula, he took the opportunity to execute some of the people who opposed him and also to clean out some of the areas of former slaves and Seminoles because he felt that this would make it better for annexation. The United States then soon actually bought Florida from the Spanish. When Jackson became president, he decided to make sure that the Black Seminole communities were moved out by force.
Yeah, were
so
murdered.
He pursued this in his policy, his larger policy of Indian removal. This led to the Second Seminole War.
This is genocide.
Which was 1835 to 1842 and became the largest and costliest of the so-called Indian Wars. Because the two communities were tied together, that is,
yeah, I saw it, D.
former slaves and the Seminoles. When the Seminoles were attacked in the Seminole War, this led to an uprising of the former slaves. In April of 1836, Black Seminoles and their Indian allies moved together to create what was the largest slave rebellion in U.S. history. This wasn't just a matter of runaway slaves. More than 385 plantation slaves ran away from their masters and joined the Black Seminoles, essentially in laying waste to the Florida sugar mills, which were some of the most valuable areas, plantations in the whole continent. One Seminole leader at the time was the leader Osceola, who is justly remembered by history. Another leader who rose up at this time was John Horse, who was ethnically a Black Seminole, and who would ultimately lead his people on a long and trying exodus for their freedom. In 1838, John Horse and the Black Seminoles agreed to stop fighting the U.S. government in exchange for moving to what was then considered to be Indian Territory, which is now today the state of Oklahoma, and for legal recognition of their freedom. So despite the fact many of them were runaway slaves, they would have the opportunity to start over again as free.
That's what the government said.
Once they moved from the Everglades to Indian Territory, however, they found that their freedom was under attack, both by whites and by other Native Americans.
Other tribes.
In 1848, a decade after they had made the agreement with the U.S. government, the U.S. Attorney General announced that the government never had the authority, the power to recognize their freedom.
This is the part of the history that really pisses me off, like how they keep reneging. Like first of all, you come and you try to lay waste to this population, even though the government didn't even like authorize it, and then don't nobody stop it. And then they're like, okay, look, we stop fucking y'all up. We'll stop fucking y'all up. Let us fucking live. Let us live our fucking lives together. All right, we'll move west to these territories. And then when we get there, y'all start fucking with us again. Like, if shit is just like, for real, as a Black person, this shit really fucks. Like, how many times did the country just lie? Just lie. Oh, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. 40 acres and a mule. Oh, you get your land. Oh, you'll get, like, man, please.
In fact, they were still, those who had been slaves, still enslaved. This was like opening season on them, basically declaring that they were there for the picking. And so they did the only thing they could do. They fled once again. Without security in Indian Territory, Horse and his Seminole ally Coacuchi promptly went to Mexico, where slavery was already illegal and had been for a couple of decades.
In Mexico, y'all.
There, Horse became famous as
this turn in the story is really good. I know I'm gonna stop stopping it, but when you see also, like, sometimes I see on social media people are so amazed to know that there are Black people in Mexico and there are Black indigenous people in Mexico. Once you start learning your history, you realize that's not like, there's Black people everywhere. Let me just tell you that there's Black people everywhere. Melanin is everywhere. Stop being surprised by that. But I will say that's more so mainstream media never ever showing you what that looks like, what Black indigeneity look like, what Black folks look like, what the enslaved populations and what their influence was on like places like Mexico or in Canada and like other places where you don't necessarily associate Black bodies. I mean, Black people all up and through Canada, but you know what I mean. We don't talk about it enough. Same facade you dropped in the chat. So many stories of Black sovereign settlements being eradicated. Couldn't have said it better. You said it better than I ever could. Absolutely.
A general in the Mexican army, and his people found a way to make a life. Once they relocated to Mexico, things changed. When slave catchers from the Republic of Texas went over the border to try to find the runaway slaves, now free men, they met resistance not only from the Black Seminoles, but also from the Mexicans and the Mexican army itself. Eventually, the Black Seminoles, led by Horse, gained legally recognized Mexican land, nacimiento. Why isn't this recognized today? Well, for one thing, historians tend to be historians of Native American history or historians of slavery, but there's not many that move among these subjects. And it's a bit confusing because you have both the issue of runaway slaves and the issue of Native Americans kind of blended together, so it seems to fall through the cracks. Tradition is that Nat Turner's rebellion is the big turning point in the history of slavery and slave revolt. But that happened before the rebellion of the Black Seminoles.
Yep.
So it doesn't really fit the traditional trajectory. And perhaps most importantly, it really represents a blemish on U.S. history, not only because of the poor treatment of Native America as represented by the Seminole War, not only the poor treatment of African Americans through the device of slavery, but also because this group really did managed to negotiate a separate peace with the U.S. government, and 10 years later, the government turned their backs on them.
I'm gonna pause it right there. If you're like me, when you were younger, you always ask, well, how did like colonizers always win? And like the maybe this is, I don't know if this is a responsible response. I don't know if it's very simplistic, but it's because the way these founders, you can't found shit on stolen land, but the way that these founders, these colonizers move, there are no rules of engagement, right? I know war is vicious, is bloody, it's all those things, but there typically are like treaties and like rules to like warfare. Like there's certain lines that so-called civilized people would not cross. And what you see with those waves and waves of colonizers that came over here for various reasons, whether it was our founding fathers, I'm using air quotes if you're listening to this, I'm not being literal, but our founding fathers would constantly promise something to a population of people, and maybe even some were well-intentioned to some degree, but the way that our government is set up, it just would constantly just act like it didn't happen, feign ignorance. I see a lot of that with like even engaging our mayor locally, seriously, and I'm not even trying to take a pot shot. I've seen this is how politicians in general do, like to feign ignorance, especially when put on the spot or when a constituency uncovers something or lifts up some injustice with the Gadsden Creek issue. Specifically, I've seen and heard third party maybe stories, and I've seen it firsthand. The mayor feigned ignorance around, this is really what can we do? And that part too, like, you didn't know that these people were struggling. You didn't know that this was a thing. There's just no rules though. Like the savagery that comes with white supremacy, it has no bounds, and we're seeing that. The one thing I hope I did yesterday was talking about the legacy or the tradition of integrated or mixed race civil rights or racial justice advocacy. Really what I hope to do is take the historical and tie it directly to the contemporary, so that we don't think that these are age-old practices, because we're still seeing white supremacy come up, make up new rules. throw out old rules, Kyle Rittenhouse, the judge, throw out this charge, throw out that, make things convenient, and then rewrite history, right? And so I want to tie the historical to the contemporary and remind you that a lot of things that we're seeing now, happening right now, have already happened. And so when you know that, I know you're saying, well, that doesn't come from me. That means that we keep fighting a never-ending battle. Duh, this is a never-ending battle, right? This is good versus evil. This is all of those things. But also, it's important for you to learn, from that organizing. So I want you to learn from the Lumbee. I want you to learn from the Black Armed Guard. I want you to learn from the Black Seminoles and John Horace and Osceola. We have to learn from these stories. Let me see what y'all said in the chat over here. D, you said when Tecklenburg stood there and said, "Oh, we just found out that we own the statue," right? That one pissed me off. Like, and I remember at the time, I'm like, I was apoplectic. I'm like, wait a minute, you done told us for 100 and something years that you couldn't move this motherfucker, and now you like, oh, it's the anniversary of Mother Emanuel. Let me like, what? Lost your fucking, you forgot what you told us when you wanted to add a plaque for context. Get the fuck out of here. Exactly, and they do it like it's all about white political. Here we go with it's Tuesday. So grounds creepy. Anyway, but like white political will sit there. You cannot set your clock by no white political will. They act right when they want to, and they withdraw all the time. Case in point. Right? Oh, flooding my content and all the other stuff in summer 2020, and then withdraw whenever the fuck they want. And that's just people. That ain't even leaders of government.
So it's, in multiple ways, a difficult story for people of the United States to tell. But it's worth remembering that a community of freedom fighters trekked from Florida to Oklahoma to Mexico and found ultimately peace and freedom and prosperity in lives that they could direct as their own. I recommend highly the website johnhorse.com for more information.
Oh, let's go to that. I didn't watch to the end. Let's go to that. Oh, wait, hold up. Okay, johnhorse.com. So again, thank you, native-land.ca. I can't drop links in the chat, but thank you. Was that Saint Facade who did that? Who did that? I don't want to get the right credit. And B-Man, you dropped a link too. Allie dropped the Guardian link that I missed. I'm sorry. Who dropped this link? Oh, no. Megsy dropped the link. Megsy dropped the link. Thank you, Megsy. All right, so we did that, but let's go to johnhorse.com real quick, and then we're going to hop back over. Remember now, South Carolina now. And we're going to go back to that 1619 piece again. John Wildhorse. What is it? I'm going to call him Wildhorse so bad. I want to call him John. Oh, here we go. Ooh, okay. Go to www. I don't say www no more. That's why I laugh. Go to www.johnhorse.com. It looks like it's not a secure website, but go to it. Yeah, do your Googles. Oh, yeah. This is good. Okay. I'm not going to click on it because it's not secure. I'll figure it out. And I'm going to learn more about this Black Armed Guard. We're going to learn more about that. Okay. All right, let me close this out. Let's get back to it. So I pulled up. So when the 1619 project came out, of course, I was one of those people who didn't send away for it, who didn't try to buy it. I did have it in my hands at the Charleston County Public Library, and that to me was enough. And then when they said, oh yeah, this is available via PDF, I'm like, oh, that's fine. So I downloaded the 1619 project. You probably can still find it online. There's all types of like teachers, guides, and everything. So as we learned from the guy Dembe Jessen, the 1619 project clip that we just watched that talked about Black Seminoles, and the first Underground Railroad went from like the Carolinas and whatnot south to Florida, because the Spanish right there were like giving us safety and whatnot, and that's when we aligned with the Black Seminoles. So he talked about that in the video, but this is his portion of the contributions in the actual 1619 project when you read it. So it says right here, July 27th, 1816, American troops attacked Negro Fort, a stockade in Spanish Florida established by the British, and left to the Black Seminoles, a Native American nation of Creek refugees, free Black people, and fugitives from slavery. Nearly all the soldiers, women, and children in the fort were killed, right? We just learned that really sad history. But this is some of what he wrote. I'm not really good at reading poetry, stuff like that, but I'm going to do my best. I'm not like the best. Let me make it a little larger. I'm just not the best at it. Let's see. Damn. But yeah, maybe we could just, that way y'all can see it. It says, they weren't headed north to freedom. They fled away from the North Star, turned their back on the Mason-Dixon line, put their feet to freedom by fleeing further south to Florida, ran to where gator and viper roamed. I didn't want to select this, sorry. Free in the mosquito, where gator and viper roamed, free in the mosquito swarm of the Suwannee. They slipped out deep after sunset, shadow to shadow, shoulder to shoulder, stealthing southward, stealing themselves. Ooh, I love that. I love that image. Stealing themselves, because they were contraband, y'all. Stealing their souls to run steal through any slave catcher who dared try stealing them back north. I'm reading it a little bit slow on purpose because the words are really powerful. Let me read it again. I'm not going to read the entire piece. They weren't headed north to freedom. They fled away from the North Star, turned their back on the Mason-Dixon line, put their feet to freedom by fleeing further south to Florida, ran to where gator and viper roamed free in the mosquito swarm of the Suwannee. They slipped out deep after sunset, shadow to shadow, shoulder to shoulder, stealthing southward, stealing themselves, stealing their souls to run steal through any slave catcher who dared to try stealing them back north. They billeted in the swamp mud, sawgrass, and cypress. They waded through waves of water lily and duckweed. They thinned themselves in thickets and thorn bush, hiding their young from thieves of black skin marauding under moonlight and cloud cover. Many once knew another shore, an ocean away, whose language, songs, stories were outlawed. I'm going to stop it there. And again, that was the gentleman that you heard from in the 1619 piece. Just to give you, that was his contribution. That's part of his contributions to
and communing with the Creek.
So this was him.
And really,
let me make it smaller so you can see the actual. Yeah. So this is when you download the 1619 project. You'll see this on page 58. It's like a poem here. And it's really powerful. And again, I'm reading this and lifting this up because this is South Carolina history, right? And he references it in the presentation. He references it here, the Carolinas here, this bottom part. Y'all can't see it, but it's like Creeks called them Seminole when they were bonded with renegade Creeks. Spaniards called them Cimarrons, runaways, escapees from Carolina plantation death prisons. Look at that. That's all one. Escapees from Carolina plantation death prisons. Whew. All right. And Tom, thank you for lifting up that aspect of how the history of the solidarity. Thank you so much, Nicole, for the bits. As I was reading, I saw the alert. Thank you so much. Right, stealing their souls to run steal. Like that shit is bars. Whew. Yeah, I think I might quote. Might have to quote this. For Thingstaken. Says, but they were bonded, black and red in blood, black and red in blood red hue, maroon. And like I don't know if y'all saw that image in the Seminole documentary we just watched, the 9-minute little documentary. like you saw, I don't know if you saw the natives hiding like in the root of like a cypress tree. Like that is like black maroonage too. Like black people fled enslavement and created entire communities in the swamps, literally in the swamps, the cypress water, that dark cypress water. They would use the tree roots, and they would use other parts of the swamp, and they'd actually make it inhabitable. Or as they were fleeing from further south to Florida, they would also know the swamps a little bit better than those chasing them, and they were able to at least like hide out for a moment or two in the swamps. They knew how to use that for cover. It's just an amazing image of how, like, and think about, I don't know if you were moved by the words, of course you were, but like how powerful the image was, like of mosquitoes, gators, water moccasins, or vipers, and all these elements that are treacherous, even like, you know, treacherous then, treacherous now. And they didn't have the modern day amenities that we would have to protect ourselves. You know, it's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I saw Born in the Water. I saw that too. Yeah, it looked beautiful. I love the book cover, the cover of the book, Nicole. All right, I want to lift up. So what's on my mind is to lift up also, before we transition to the next video, lift up the some of the books that I discovered while kind of creating what I was going to talk about today and make it specific to the South. I didn't even research this topic. I did not. Y'all, let me actually pull up the picture instead of that. Y'all, not this one. This one's great. This is not a book. I wish it was. We're going to get to that in a second. Let me find. Here we go. Y'all, I had no effing clue. Maybe I should just bring up book alerts. Do I need a new, maybe I need a new button? Maybe Jamaican air horns will be the book alert button. The air horns will have many uses. But this one is not even out yet. Yo, this ain't even out yet. It's come out in December. I'm about to pre-order it today. Do not buy it for me. Thank you, though. I ain't gonna lie. I'm getting a lot of books. It's becoming a library in here. But I'm gonna cop this one. This one ain't even out yet, son. Right? So this is Black Indians and Freedmen. Black Indians and Freedmen, written by Christina Dickinson Cousin. And in the subtitle you see at the bottom, the African Methodist Episcopal Church and Indigenous Americans. You know, Black Indians, freedmen. See, this is the complexity that we don't really talk about here in the South. Shout out to Nick Butler, but we need to come on, Nick. Nah, Nick do a lot of heavy lifting. But like this is, and we're going to actually go to a Nick Butler because his Time Machine episode that recently launched is actually coincides perfectly. Nick does a great job. I was just joking. But no, this right here. So when I found this morning, I said, oh, wait, say less. Because the AME Church, if y'all didn't know what African Methodist Episcopal was, that's AME Church. And you know they have a long history of organizing against slavery, a long history of abolition work. So I found this and I tweeted it, and I was like, oh no, let me refresh because I took that down. That's an old tweet. Cause I was like, oh, I gotta tag the author, and lo and behold, the author hit me back this morning. Christina Dickinson Cousin, thank you so much for the support. Oh, I'm definitely copping this book. Yeah, so if you don't remember to write it down or whatever, go to my Twitter feed. And I tweeted it early this morning. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to read that. So I'm going to share that. And in the vein of what D dropped in the, D dropped it in the thing. Let me get it right here. Thank you, Nicole. I got you. Hold on. I got y'all. Y'all are so clutch today. Co-producers. Okay, hold on. So D dropped this in the chat earlier. Shout out for you always. Shout out for you finding this on bookshop.org. All right, because we're going to support local bookshops. So this is another one. So pre-order Black Indians and Freedmen. Right, we're going to pre-order that. But we're also going to dig into this. Maybe use our library card. How about that, Mika? How about you don't have to buy the book, Mika? How about you just go to the library and go get it? Got to remind myself how I used to do it back when I was a little more broke. All right, so Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. So Dee says she's going to jump into that. Please make sure you use like a local bookshop or bookshop.org that does support local bookstores. Don't try to avoid Amazon if you can. I know sometimes, like especially when it comes to audiobooks, sometimes you feel like you can't avoid Amazon or Audible, which is Amazon, but you can do things like make sure you try to look at, of course, bookshop.org, thrift books, other like we have turning page books. We've got the Itinerant Literate, my girls over there, and you got the Hoopla app too. I'm a member of the Richland County Public Library, so the Hoopla app comes with that library card. So I use that to access a lot of audiobooks as opposed to using Audible. I do have Audible, in full disclosure, but I try to use Hoopla and Libby, I guess. But Hoopla has way more availability for me. They got a lot of Beverly Jenkins books, okay? If Brianne is listening, they got a lot of audiobooks there, okay? So there are ways, there are alternatives. All right, let's get back to it, to our history, our rich history. Again, we're lifting up indigenous sovereignty and you know, black indigeneity as well. Want to get into, now this one is not really tricky. We're gonna stay with the Black Seminoles, because we're gonna stay with that because we want to really talk more about. No. Let me transition. We're gonna come back to that. We need to talk more about. We're gonna come back to the Black Seminoles here in this clip. This is from the Rock Newman show. Do y'all watch the Rock Newman show? I watch it. All right. I watch a lot of old clips. I don't even know if it's still on like that. I know I watch a lot of old clips. But let's talk about Moo Fresh, right? So if you don't know, she's been on Tiny Desk. She's been everywhere, right? But I think it's important to look at have a modern, bright, radiant depiction of Black indigeneity. So I think it's important. So artist Moo Fresh here, she sits down with Mark Lamont Hill for BNC, and they discuss her Black and Native identity. So let's watch this.
November is Native American Heritage Month, and over the next few weeks, we will be hearing from Native artists and leaders about the experiences of Indigenous people, both past and present. One of those voices is my next guest, one of my favorite MCs in the whole world. Her name is Moo Fresh, and she's an Afro-Indigenous singer, MC, and songwriter who Black Thought of the Roots has called a quadruple threat, and he is not lying. The Grammy-nominated powerhouse has used her platform to uplift both Black and Native lives. For instance, performing on BET in the memory of Sandra Bland at Black Girls Rock, and joining Indigenous water protectors at the Standing Rock protests in North Dakota.
Come through.
The sister walk it like she talk it. She's joining me now to talk more about her art and her activism as somebody who lives at the intersection of Black and Native identities. It's the incredible Moo Fresh here at Black News tonight. My sister, so good to see you.
Oh my God, so good to be seen. And thank you
Brianne,
so much
I didn't know that.
It's such an honor and pleasure.
Of course, of course. So speaking from your own lived experience, what is something that Black people who are not Native should know about the experiences of Indigenous people in this country?
Black people who don't have shared Native experience should know that we are more similar than we are different. We definitely share the experience of being disenfranchised by colonial power, and some of the ramifications of that disenfranchisement.
I want to pause it here because I want to read, because I know my Patreon Chiron is blocking. It says her name. You can see that, Moo Fresh, and it says Grammy-nominated Afro-Indigenous singer, songwriter, and activist. And again, for some of y'all know, if y'all following me, then y'all reading, consuming a lot of really progressive content that introduces you to more complex identities. But I want to make sure, I want to kind of underscore, almost to the point of annoyance probably, I want to underscore the importance of seeing Blackness with understanding the complexity, right? This is also, I lament, I'm not trying to center myself real quick. I lament a lot about like, I fit out, I don't fit in, right? I don't fit in with a lot of even like traditional Black sex here, SECTS, here in Charleston. Pardon me. Ain't got no water near me. But part of why I think I fit out, and I've embraced that, is because I am walking in a way, actively trying to, I don't know if I'm effective, trying to demonstrate that Blackness is not a monolith, of course, that Blackness is not this flat experience of just suffering human bondage and then, somebody sat in the front of the bus and we got free. Like, I'm trying to represent or model the full richness that is Blackness. Now, that's not even talking about my ethnic background or my Gullah Geechee descendants or anything like that. It's just like, look, I'm this Black person with these varied interests, with this different point of view and perspective. And what I really hope to impart today, along with sharing lesser known aspects of Black and Indigenous history, I'm also hoping that you understand that when you start creating relationships with Black people, I really want white people to hear this. I really need y'all to hear this. I need y'all to get this in y'all marrow, get this deep down in your body at a cellular level. Don't assume we all get along. That's number one, because a lot of y'all keep running my name to somebody who I'm not in community with, and I just be like watching with popcorn, like that ain't gonna end well. You can ask them, you can call her, but she don't like me. But you keep thinking because I'm Black, she positive, I'm positive. Like, anyway, we're not a monolith. We're not always all in community with each other, and I'm not trying to emphasize friction or discord, but my point is, like, we're very different. So when you approach us, don't approach us based on an experience you had with another Black person, right? Don't approach us assuming anything about us. And I think what I'm trying to get you into the practice of, that Charleston doesn't do a good job with at all, is understanding that we have these really rich pasts and we have these really rich personal narratives, and all of it matters. Again, I always say, even the people I'm not in community with, I'm rooting for and I love on some level. But like, we are very different. So please I really do hope you get the rich complexity of Black identity through some of this content today. That's just something I wanna, but please, like sometimes y'all be wanting to help me and I love y'all, but I don't know if y'all get, like, okay, Mika's a little different. So going to like a traditional Black leader or leading voice or commentator, you might think, oh, Mika, y'all got to look a little closer and listen a little harder. Wait, is that Black person saying the same thing as this Black person? Like, I've been wanting to say that for like a week or so. Like, some of y'all not making distinctions, and I'm not saying better or worse. I'm saying different. Like, we ain't no better, ain't no hierarchy. It's just like Mika, right? So like, like, make it make sense. Like, shout out to Allie. Allie, if you don't, I don't know if Allie's still watching. I don't know if she's on the road, but like, Allie introduced me to somebody recently, Alicia, and Allie, it really was it was one of the most, this gonna sound so crazy, but y'all don't understand how many people y'all be trying, not y'all, there be so many people that people be trying to introduce me to. I'm like, what made you think I wanted to talk to them? But Allie knocked it out the park. I was like, wait a minute, do I got new best friends? Do I got a new best friend? Right. Like, oh, it's okay. It's a lag. It's okay. But like, just make sure you proceed with call. Ask critical questions. Don't just go for the Black person you had a favorable response with, and then come back to me, somebody you had a favorable response with, and then like, oh, that's gonna be perfect. No. Just we're not a monolith. If Moving Fresh don't convince you otherwise, I don't know how to. Hey, there you go. Hey, Alicia, you watching? I was like, wait a minute, Alicia is super dope. Usually people be like, oh, you're gonna love this person. Yeah, they were conservative back in college, but they were the Black Republicans, but they really love nonpartisan. I'm like, wait, what? That was a weird example, but yeah, no. So that's it. Okay. Sorry.
Like drug.
I hope I didn't lose. I hope I didn't lose y'all. But yeah, Moo Fresh. Let me back it up a little bit so we can regale in her brilliance. Here we go.
We definitely share the experience of being disenfranchised by colonial power, and some of the ramifications of that disenfranchisement. Looks like drug abuse, looks like alcoholism. It looks like living in a food desert. There's a lot of the same things that plague Black communities and plague ghettos, also plague reservations. And if you go further back, being an Indigenous person, and I also want to include
Thank you, little
Black
mama.
Americans who are from the South,
See-
right?
see?
And who before then, some of whom were from Africa, our connectedness to the land is very, very similar. You know,
Rewind that back, because that was...
Black Americans.
Now listen,
who are
that's
from
called
the
motherfucking bars, nigga. You know nothing about that.
All right, here we go. That part was just so powerful. If you're Black and from the South, like, come through. Oh my gosh, why are you doing this to me?
Black Americans who are from the South, right? And who before then, some of whom were from Africa, our connectedness to the land is very, very similar. You know, there are a lot of traditions that I'm sure if you have a grandmother from the South, that she'll tell you traditions that are steeped in connectedness to the earth, to animals, to God, to ancestors, those sorts of things. There actually are a lot of similarities between Indigenous cultures and, you know, Black American cultures.
For sure, you know, and part of bridging that divide is also the reverse, right? Like I often wonder also what can Native populations stand to learn about the experiences of Black people here in America?
That's a good question.
I mean, the same thing. I think a lot of times if you live in an area where you don't interact with many African Americans and you only have the media to give you examples of what Black people are like, it can be mostly negative. You know, the media mostly has a negative portrayal of Black people. And, you know, a lot of my friends who are hip hop artists, who are Native hip hop artists, they have a better understanding because they tour and they interact more with Black people and can really see the diversity of the culture and the experience of Black people. But when you don't, there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of miseducation, and I think having to do with European influence. It just does. A lot of anti-Blackness comes from the impact and influence of the colonial settler mentality.
Facts.
And it's divisive. It is everywhere in the world that the colonial power goes. They're divisive.
I just said that.
And they're anti-Black.
And they're anti-Black.
You know, so it's
and we internalize that.
For us to just to take the time.
So real quick, and like I mentioned that earlier, right? Wherever like these colonial forces are, and I talked about the rules of engagement. There are no rules of engagement when colonial forces are involved. First of all, Little Mama, thank you for dropping what you dropped in the chat. I think a lot of your art is very inspirational, especially this new series that you have currently. I'm trying to remember the name of the gallery. Shit, I just had a brain fart. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, your current exhibition that's about your road trip. I'm glad you dropped a little bit of how of your experience during your road trip. Sorry for the brain fart. It wasn't mean to be disrespectful, but thank you for that. But again, with white colonization, that what comes with that is a lot of anti-Blackness, and you know we're not going to ignore. We're going to get to it. We're not going to ignore how indigenous tribes have enslaved Black people, because that anti-Blackness is just like it comes in and it disrupts relationships, and that's one of the things. That's one of the unfortunate outcomes of this country being colonized by white supremacists, is that anti-Blackness did in fact catch on in certain Native populations. But it's important to do the unpacking of anti-Blackness. I always have to unpack my anti-Blackness. I be saying some real anti-Black shit that's steeped in white supremacy. And so I'm working toward that too. So if you know I'm working on it, you know, I know Native people, white people, whomever, they have to work on it as well. But let Moo Fresh finish.
to get to know people, to understand people's lived experience, because it really is more similarities. There are more similarities than there are differences. And we have a common struggle. We have a common experience. You know, we've been disenfranchised in the same ways, and we can use some of the same steps to regain power, both political, economic, and cultural, because a big part of what Native people went through, as well as Black people, was cultural genocide. You can, before you break a people, you have to strip their identity from them. And that's what happened for all of us. Our language was taken for Native people and Black people. Our God was taken, our cultural practices, our clothing. And those things leave a person empty. They leave a person lost and disconnected from their cultural lineage and from their purpose. So those same tactics were used on both of us, that we will forget who we were and why we're here, and our rightful place belonging to this land as protectors of this land.
Absolutely. Talk to me about, we talking about culture and cultural power. Your music, your artistry is one of the things that helps connect all of us. You have an amazing new album out. It's called Vintage Babies 2, Queen of Culture. Talk to me about that project.
Oh, wow.
Man, I'm so proud of this project. One of the first songs we released with D Smoke called North Star. Again, you will see the unity of Afro-Indigenous culture, right? One of the first stops on the Underground Railroad that's not talked about often, especially on the East Coast, was Native villages. You know, when Nat Turner was hiding, he was hiding with the Nottoway before they caught him, before he gave himself, you know, he surrendered.
Come on.
So there's always been a deep shared history on the East Coast in particular that goes back generations and generations. Like, being Afro-Indigenous is not a new thing. Most people on the East Coast who are Afro-Indigenous, they've been Afro-Indigenous for several generations, if not hundreds and hundreds of years. So I really want to show that shared experience. Queen of Culture, I mean, it's a blend of all of my experiences, from jazz to hip hop, like the lineage and the culture of Black music. Like, it takes you on a journey. That's how I understand music. I learned field hollers and Native American songs and African songs and the blues and jazz and hip hop. That's how I learned music. Before I ever got to sing R&B, my mother made me learn the whole lineage of music and of Black music in America and the history that was associated with it. And when you hear like music of the Seminole, right, who have a very strong Afro-Indigenous influence, you hear the moaning and the wailing and the healing that's present in that music, the tonal calling. It connects you with something bigger than you. And that's what I really wanted to bring forward with this project, where there'll be times in the album where you'll just hear sounds, calls, moans, wails, and we'll tell stories. We're talking about reparations, and we're talking about, you know, connecting back with the divine. We're talking about our purpose and our place. We're talking about reconnection with the land and all of those different things. And we're talking about, you know, fun stuff too. We're talking about love and partying and everything, the full scope of our experience here, like how we came to be.
Let me pause it real quick. It's almost finished, but I want to read what Tom, and then also want to read a little bit from when Nicole dropped into the chat. But you said Mumu Fresh, he nailed it. Cultural genocide. Now all the land-based practices that literally created the ecosystem that sustained Native people and our earth have been stolen, poison. Yep, bastardized, like, you know, yeah, crazy. Nicole, again, let me just reference the 2 comments you dropped. You says, you know, when we passed through the West, it was heartbreaking to see how wealthy the area around natural parks were, and how big of a contrast the reservations were. That's real. That on a very, very tiny, small scale. That's how I feel about Wagner Terrace and Burke High School, like how Burke High School probably will be closed as we know it. That school will be closed in a matter of years because of all the divestment, the TIF districts bullshit that Riley set in place and that Tecklenburg has perpetuated. So the TIF districts taking money from that historical Black school and those Black neighborhoods that used to sustain there, used to exist there. And then you see Wagner Terrace, all this wealth. I'm like, wait a minute, Wagner Terrace is right there, and all the people. Let's say 10 years ago, whatever, people had kids. Well, why aren't the kids from Wagner Terrace? Why aren't they going to Burke? Right? Why isn't that school pop? And I don't know the median age for people who live in Wagner Terrace because it is long money over there. But I'm assuming there's some folks having some babies over there. Why they not, like, over the past 10, 15, 20 years, like, you know what I mean? Like, you that's a really good call out, though, when you look at where white wealth sits and then look at neighboring, look at other, like, neighboring communities. And if you see this huge, like, line of demarcation in terms of, like, property looking a little less, I don't know, just less curb appeal, less whatever, less resources, you gotta start interrogating that. Like, oh, what is that? Huh? I wonder how that happened. So that's a great observation you made on your trip. And then, Nicole, you said you contacted some activists out there who actually put something in the show, but they didn't get back to you in time, right? I got you. Yeah. You didn't just want to include it without permission, which is very thoughtful. Yeah. So thank you both, Lil Mama and Tom, for your contributions to this conversation.
And just unapologetically living in our authenticity, you know, not waiting for somebody to sanction your you-ness, but just here I am.
I love the way you put that.
Full expression.
I love that. And you in the full expression is dope, is beautiful, is powerful, it's original, and it touches our spirits, it touches our souls. You're just such an incredible artist, and we're so glad to have you here. Thank you for joining me on Black News Tonight.
Okay. All right. Ooh, let me hop out of that. Not want to see that. Ooh. Oh, not right now. So thank you, the Owl Lady. Thank you, Noah. You just gave me Noah. Yo. Oh my gosh. Noah. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Noah. You're just doing a lot and I like it. All right. So the Owl Lady just dropped in the chat. I love how we use the chat too to make sure that we get like, okay, is this person? Okay, they cool. All right, so you said the Taino and indigenous community specifically does a great job of including Black individuals, considering that the Tainos originated from Cuba, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, DR, Haiti. Hello. Okay. All right. They also recognize for some. They also recognize for some their ancestors that were enslaved individuals that the Spanish brought to the island of Puerto Rico, right? You talking like a Boricua right there. I got you. You know, to the island of Puerto Rico and the islands in the tropics. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that, Owl Lady. All right, so let me see the next thing I wanted to curate. I wanted to go back to. You heard Tom. You kind of got focused on that piece about like cultural genocide. Where Moo Fresh lifted up, and then we already listened to Timbe, right? Talk about the Black Seminoles and how the first Underground Railroad ran south, right? And how folks in enslaved populations in the Carolinas, but specifically South Carolina too. You know, we're focusing on how they fled to the south, right? For freedom. He also goes on to talk about it. I just want to, even though this is not specifically about indigenous folk, it's about cultural identity, because we're going to pivot now to what Moo Fresh said too, like how the language of the indigenous folks were stripped from them, Black and indigenous, right? Were stripped from them. We know that, like, if you read the history, you will read about like the Carlisle School that was up in PA. We're going to kind of Google that real quick. I don't have a specific video in mind, but we're gonna do our Googles together. But I wanted you to hear this part too. This is also from the 1619 Project. It's so much South Carolina in the 1619 Project. It was such a let me see, hold on. It's such a like a L, like no, there was no programming. If there was, it wasn't like big and splash. It didn't make it to me, but maybe y'all, keep me honest. Maybe y'all saw programming specific to South Carolina when the 1619 Project came out, because I was really hoping to see professors unpack, create programming, maybe at USC, create programming that highlights the South Carolina specific history, like the Calhoun piece that we watched together from this presentation that's in the 1619 Project, like plantation economy, right? Talking about Gullah culture, right? The baskets, the ballast stones. I was waiting for professors here to just start, or historians just to start, like, you know, it's not too late. The book just came out, so It's not too late. But listen to this, though. When we talk about cultural identity and how it was stripped from people of color that were here, it's stripped from indigenous people, but also stripped from black people. I wanted to lift up this, I think this next contribution.
Language and the use of these people of language. And I wonder if you can talk about how, first of all, what the history is there as far as the way people were using, these people that you're writing about were using their own native tongues, but also what that meant to you as a poet.
Well, specifically, it's about prohibiting the enslaved to speak their native language for fear that they might foment some type of revolt against the plantation owners. So you can't speak the language that you were raised with on the continent. You have to speak English. And it raises a question about, well, what happened with those languages? How much of those languages were retained? And we can actually, when we look at Geechee and Gullah culture, right, we can see retentions of those Africanisms, you know, today. But I'm also imagining the idea of not being able to speak your own tongue under pain of death or whipping or whatever, and then escaping and being in a place where you can anoint the land with your own language and the sound of your own music and the sound of your own drums, which were also prohibited, and being able to celebrate your humanity through the language that you were born into, and imagining that kind of freedom.
So that was powerful, and like he lifted up specifically Gullah culture. Let me see if I can find something on the Carlisle School. Was that spelled like with the? People be spelling Carlisle all kinds of ways. Isn't there like a G in there in Carlisle? Fuck it. Let me see. Y'all gonna see something? Here we go. Ooh, yes. Ooh. This gonna be tough. Tough. Let's start right here. Ooh. So this is one of those now this video, so it's heavy on text and not on narration. So let me rewind it back. So this was I guess this is observing the trend on TikTok, which is history of Native American boarding schools explained by TikTokers. So so this girl right here has a caption, natives minding their own business. So Native youth are using TikTok to bring attention to the history of Native American boarding schools. I'm just reading it for those who might be listening. So the caption, in the 1960s, so it's the 1960s and you're being taken from your home to an unknown world.
Don't blame yourself. No. A lot of families don't like to be reminded of what happened, and you're not supposed to talk about it because you're kind of inviting it back.
So it says here in the 1860s. Did I say 1960s? I meant 1860s, but I said 19. In the 1860s, as tribes were being moved by the U.S. government, Navajo populations were allowed to return to their lands. Remember, they had the whole like civilized tribes and shit. Navajo populations were allowed to return to their lands under the stipulation that they signed the 1868 treaty, which is bullshit. The treaty included forced assimilation practices. So they had to, hey, you can get your land back, but you gotta sign this treaty. And this is the bullshit. Including mandating English education in order to ensure the civilization of the Indians. And that's a quote, that's not my language, to ensure the civilization of the Indians. Yeah, Brienne. I missed that. I was looking in the chat. Says a number of off-reservation boarding schools were established where native children all over the country, not just Navajo kids, were sent to assimilate to American European culture. Hold on, it's a little loud. Let me just turn it down a little bit. I'm gonna just turn it on a little bit. One of the most famous boarding schools is probably the Carlisle. Let's see. What's the Carlisle Indian Industrial School? The Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. This was vicious, y'all. It was created by Brigadier General Richard Henry Pratt, who said the aim was to kill the Indian, save the man. Wait, kill the Indian and what? Oh, so within them, kill the savage in them. Damn. That is this. First of all, for real, this is hard to take. Jesus. I can't keep reading it out loud.
They would have to hide, basically, and escape.
So, okay, I guess I can. 4 members of the Navajo Nation moving away from their ancestral. Thank you so much for, yeah. Good morning. Thank you for the follow.
The Four Sacred Mountains is where the Navajo Reservation is based around, and generally, like, we're not supposed to leave just because that's home. That's where we're protected.
Thank you for the sub.
Protective shell. And one story I remember being told was that cars weren't a big thing on the reservation, and I remember them being told that they saw a van or a bus, and they were told if they were ever to see any of those to run away, get away from that. They were told to go hide behind the mountain, and that's what they did. And they didn't know, there was no way of telling like when they would leave or when they would come back or what was happening.
Oh, wow. Okay, let me pause it here. Between 1881 and 1925, 10 boarding schools were built on the Navajo Reservation. Daniel Martinez attended one of those schools.
We just never seen that stuff before, you know.
Like sports and stuff like that.
We had to eat with a fork and spoon and knives, you know. We never had that.
Thank you so much.
The first white man I seen was at the trading post, the Indian trader. And then from there they took us to the boarding school. They took me to this one room, you know.
I paused the alerts, but y'all can keep going.
You know, an older woman and took down our names, you know, and then my clothes.
Bye, D. Appreciate you, D.
From there, you know, like I said, it was hard. It was hard. It was a nightmare for me.
Thank you.
Because I didn't know anything. One word of English, you know, nothing. I didn't know anything about school. And everything was new and scary. I was scared. You know, like I said, it was a nightmare. They cut off all my hair.
Cut off all your hair. That's so violent. And you know how important Native American, seriously, I know we talk culturally how serious hair can be, right? All right. Thank y'all so much for the alerts. I put them back on. Thank you so much. Let me just, I know we're talking about serious subject matter, so the alerts pop up. Y'all get it. But we talk about how important hair is to Black people. That's more of a cultural thing. Like it's spiritual. I'm not going to do that. But we know how spiritually significant hair is to Native cultural expression, or rather indigenous cultural expression and spiritual practices. That's crazy. What's up? All right, I'm gonna pause the alerts. It's heartbreaking.
I wouldn't speak English. I don't know it was important until later on. Way later on. The way I could mingle with the...
Thank you.
with the other races.
Yeah. Says some people in younger generations feel the schools represent a loss of culture. So that's the thing, like when we say, oh, things are dying off, no, they probably were killed off before things like, oh, people just like maybe younger generations don't feel connected. All that's real, right? Like through time, attrition, whatever, sometimes, you lose things with the advancement of technology and whatnot. I talked about this with Jennifer Singleton, the Sweetgrass Basket artisan, who's in the episode 1 of the Water Podcast with Policy Link. She talked about technology just really being like a bummer to her because kids are just not as curious about like doing things with their hands and all that, and how like the cultural expression of Gullah Geechee culture in the form of artisanship, I guess, if that's a term. She said how that's dwindling. Well, some of this shit was killed off, especially with indigenous culture and with Gullah Geechee culture. A lot of shit was killed off. And like, then, you factor in technology and all the other stuff and all the other distractions. Thank y'all so much for the bits. Y'all are so cute. Yeah, that just really compounds the injury. But yeah, some people feel some younger generations feel the schools represent a loss of culture, and like you kill the culture and you kill the sense of pride and identity, and you get a lot of what the bullshit that we get today. You might be able to get back.
I definitely think a lot of ceremonies.
Oh, especially given how, like with Gullah Geechee culture, and a lot of indigenous culture is oral. Like a lot of things that were passed down in that native tongue, right? It was passed down orally. And so you lose a lot, especially when you beat the language out of people. And that's what happened at these boarding schools. I want y'all to know, I know y'all saw it here, but not only was your hair cut, you were forbidden from talking your language. You heard that with the 1619 piece with Tembe Jazz. But pertaining to Native folk, they beat the language out of you. They penalized you, they cut your hair so you wouldn't have the long hair. They called you godless, called you a savage. Right? It was so much violence. You were literally beat in these boarding schools if you did anything, anything indigenous. If you did anything associated with your culture, they tried to beat it out of you, and that's really sad. All right, you said. Let me see what's in the chat. Is it Narvis? Yes, one thing to lose some aspects of culture through time or by choice. Right? For example, you grew up religious, but you left that part, me too, kind of. Oop, don't tell my mom that. You left that part of your life behind. It's something completely different, right? When it's forcibly removed from culture. Absolutely. Thank you for that contribution. Thank you.
Lost. Because a lot of people who knew the songs and who knew more knowledge about our own tribes are gone because of it. Because there's also a rite of passage with knowledge. And some of that knowledge has been lost due to cultural and like mass genocide.
Thank you for the hype train.
Not just with my tribe in particular, but with all tribes. And I think what's great about it now is that my tribe's language is actually being taught in school and online. And that's just a way of revitalizing our own culture and definitely taking back what we want to know and what we can continue to learn. I ended up going to college out of state and across the country. And that was my first time really being away from home. All of us have a deep connection with where we're from because that's where with Navajos, our umbilical cord is buried where we feel we're at home. That way we always have a piece of ourselves to come back to. That's what connects us to where we live. So with us, there's that deep connection with where we're from and where we're born and where we call home. basically wherever your family is where home is too.
I want to pause. I want to read what the owl lady dropped into the chat. You said absolutely NPR, NPR. I know I sound like I said NPR, but in Puerto Rico, they literally put in history books that the Tainos were extinguished. Hey, owl lady, are you Puerto Rican? Are you Boricua? But they put it in the history books that they were extinguished and had no connection. Right, I had no connection to my culture except. Oh, you kind of answered the question. No connection to your culture except your grandparents and parent reminding you that you're Taino. But other than that, everyone else was claiming we didn't exist. Wow, they would just deny the existence. Right. Yay. Okay. All right. Welcome. Thank you, Aula, for sharing that. But yeah, and let me continue to read what you just wrote in the chat. You said you are Taino. I asked you before I finished reading. You said I am Taino, but other than everyone else claiming we didn't exist, so much is trying to be recovered: language, beliefs, text, and it's difficult. Yeah, it is difficult. That's the sad thing. When a lot of the stuff that we stream and we discuss on this platform, we talk about history, and a lot of the books that I'm enjoying, like A Black Woman's History of the United States and They Were Her Property, the way that those historians jump into the archives and have to find like non-traditional sources to piece together a narrative, like what was the Black woman experience, even before enslavement here, like there were Black people on this continent before, enslavement, like the official structure that we know to be, right? And but no one knows their stories, and not just Black women, Black people, all kinds of people. And so you have to have a dogged scholar, or you just have to be tenacious yourself to piece together things. And it's a journey, and it's a big lift, and it makes me mad that I had to work so hard to find out, more about my ancestors, because there is no documentation. And that was part of the erasure, was to eradicate history, was to burn the books, as we see. That's why we're talking about banned books, burnt books, and all that shit now, because this is just history replaying itself, caught on this fucking loop of, hey, we're going to destroy these cultures. We're going to use CRT to eradicate and erase this history. So what we see in the contemporary, y'all know, it's just borrowed from the past. Original Gangster. First of all, I love that name. Like that, just really, as someone who does little kitschy cute shit, I love that. The Original Gangster. As a hip hop fan, you said you didn't even find out you were part of Apache until you were 30. Thank you for the sub. Thank you, for the sub. Thank you. Right, it's crazy, and I can only look. All right, so my mom was married before she married my pop. So my brother and sister who have now passed on, but like I looked at and I did no DNA analysis, but I looked at their grandmother and their great grandmother, because growing up I actually would chill with their grannies. Like I would be at their granny house and stuff. When I tell you, if that lady ain't Native American, then I don't know. And you can't go by phenotype. But my point is, like, just too many of the features with the cheekbones and the braid and just so many physical features of not just her, like a lot of their family. I can only imagine how much indigenous history is in at least, my late brother and sister, but even probably me. Even probably me too. Like, I don't know. I don't claim it. And even if I find out something, I'm not going to do what Elizabeth Warren did. Sorry. No shade to Elizabeth Warren. I ain't going to do that. I ain't going to claim that. But I would love to know if that is a part of my history, so I can learn more about it, though, and connect with it, and not just use it as like a, little extra spicy fact. Because I was raised Black. I'm Black. I'll be Black. If I happen to be Black and Indigenous or Afro-Indigenous, that'd be great. But I ain't going to get out there and just start appropriating stuff that I wasn't raised with. I will proceed with caution. But I would love to know more about I wish I just hearing the owl lady talk about your Taino heritage and Original Gangster. Yeah, I would love to know more about if there are indigenous roots in my bloodline. I would love to learn more. Also, quick note: the blood quantification is just a weapon used by colonizers. Yup.
Now listen.
That's called motherfucking bars. Okay, so yes, it's a weapon used by colonizers to deter indigenous people from coming back to their way of life. Okay, so the blood quantification is just a weapon. Can you explain it a little bit more for people who don't know? Right? Original game. So you said your mom has the skin tone of this lady in the video, right, with green eyes, right? It just, that DNA just jumps on it. Like it can look all kinds of different ways. All right, bye, B-Man. Thank you so much. I'm almost wrapping up, I think. Oh, man. Okay, this is just a fun topic. Yeah, I probably need to wrap it up soon, but let's keep going for a little bit. Yeah. Who wants to buy me? No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't. Wait, is Alicia still reading? Alicia and Allie, we had this. Yo, Nicole, don't feel bad. Alicia and Allie and I, we went out to Triangle on Saturday for brunch/lunch. We talked about this. Allie was adamant, do not get, because of how the criminal justice system is getting a DNA, right? Right. So, and Alicia, I don't want to tell her business, but anyway, Alicia had a different vantage point. But like I want to do my genealogy like through paper. I want like archives. I want to like trace it back like old fashioned, like Skip Gates, even though they use Ancestry.com on that PBS show. But I want to like try to do the archives as much as possible. I haven't ruled out, but I don't want my DNA to be like, you find, I don't know, just the way the cops is using DNA today. But there wasn't a bad suggestion. No. I was tempted. Cause when you, seriously, Nicole, though, like when you Black, you can go back as far as you want with Ancestry.com, but like you just hit a wall sometimes. If you are a descendant of the enslaved, let me say it like that, you hit a wall, but like, cause they didn't keep track of they called you, Negro 1 or female winch Negro or whatever. Like they didn't include you. You didn't have a real name, right? No, you're not green. You're regular. It's just, You on the right path though. I'm gonna hop out of this though, cause first of all, it's very powerful. The Carlisle schools, these indigenous.
I think that.
Indigenous boarding schools. That practice is something I forgot to even try to incorporate when I started curating the videos. But I'm glad that I had the presence of mind to talk about it. Let me see what else I can get to that's important. I think I just want to again, highlight that intersection between Black culture and Indigenous culture. And I think this piece is pretty good. This is only 8 minutes. Let me see. Yeah. So this is from so I guess these people who subscribe to Little House on the Prairie. Side note. Okay, so this is from like people who read the popular series or whatever, Miss Engels, whatever. But this is funny to me because my sister used to love Little House on the Prairie. I used to hate it growing up, but my sister, whenever I was sick from school, she'd make me watch Little House on the Prairie or Anne of Green Gables or Happy Days. I did not like those shows growing up. And so anyway, this reminds me of her. May she rest. But on a serious note, so they're talking about this popular, I guess, fiction, but it had their Native American. I guess they wanted to add more context to the history that I guess the author tried to uncover. I guess it was interesting. This is interesting.
Of her famous Little House on the Prairie novels, Laura Ingalls Wilder was quoted as saying that they were the truth, but not all the truth. There was much about American life on the frontier during the 1870s and 1880s that Laura simply didn't address in detail.
Okay.
She was writing from her perspective. She was writing from her time. She was writing fiction largely built upon experiences that she had seen in her own life. Doesn't mean
like so many other books. Hold on a second. I don't know why. Like so many other books in the canon in school is written from the perspective of what? The conqueror or a white person, someone of privilege, and you're not going to get the full history. But I just thought that a part of this was compelling as it relates to what we're trying to talk about today. But let me just play a little bit more.
Mean that everyone thought this way doesn't mean that everyone lived their lives this way.
We're not
it's
censoring
just
white
a
folk.
part of the puzzle. I think what's important, though, is if you want to have a look into what life was like at that time, Laura Ingalls Wilder is one person whom you can read. There are other sources that you need to look at, however, to see what was going on in the lives of Native Americans and African Americans, because they were there.
The music they choose, they be killing me. It's so dramatic. Okay. About 5 seconds too long. Okay.
As Laura was coming of age, there was a great migration out of the South of African Americans who moved out of the South into Kansas. And they chose Kansas in particular because they thought that this was going to be a sort of promised land, a new Canaan, if you will. That's the kind of language that they used. Kansas has a long history of professing to be the quintessential free state. And it has professed to promote a kind of equality that didn't exist in other parts of the country.
The idea of movement is very, very important within the African American community, to move away from the old slavery past, the old restrictions, to create something new. Between 1870 and 1880, you have the influx of about 40,000 people coming to the Kansas region, which is a huge influx of people. But everything is not wonderful for them, and blacks are discriminated against. They are prevented from doing certain things. They are segregated in certain areas.
In the Little House books, they're very open to people of African American backgrounds, of Native American backgrounds.
So so real quick, I'm gonna be real irresponsible. Y'all remember? Okay, so I did not like to watch Little House on the Prairie, right? Let me see. Did y'all remember? But the books were more inclusive than you think, like than you would imagine. Like, do y'all remember this? Like, this made the rounds like a couple years in Little House on the Prairie. Her books were a little bit more, and Roxanne, she talks about it. Oh, on the racist depictions. Look, we're gonna get to it. But remember this? I never saw this till like a couple years ago. Let me see.
Now, last week I had you write an essay about the things that you liked the most. This week I thought it might be fun if we wrote.
If my sister would have watched this episode with me when I had chicken pox at home with her, I might have watched the show more often. I mean, maybe if I saw this episode first.
An essay about the things that we dislike the most. Solomon?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you think of something that you dislike?
Being a nigger.
Oh, wow.
I didn't mean nothing bad. The teacher asked a question and I just answered it.
Why'd you say it?
'Cause it's the truth. If and I was white, my pa'd still be alive. Being a nigga killed my pa. You answer me something, sir.
If I can.
Would you like to live to be 100?
Yeah, sure I would. It's not very likely, but I guess all of us like to live to a ripe old age.
Would you rather be black and live to be 100, or white and live to be 50?
Shit. Yeah, Michael Landon. Yeah, like, okay. My Joni, you and my sister would have got along. Y'all would have got along. But yeah, no. She just made me watch it. I didn't even want to watch it. I wanted to watch the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon. But yeah, if I always saw that episode. But real quick, wait, Roxanne Gay. I didn't even know there was a whole commentary on how racist Little House on the Prairie was. Hold on.
Nordstrom also asked Wilder to consider cutting a scene from Little Town on the Prairie, in which Pa appears in blackface and sings a racist song.
Oh, that's in the book?
Wilder agreed, and some of the offending lyrics were trimmed. But the word darkies and the illustration can still be found in the book today.
I know some colleagues have said that they wish those scenes would be cut from new versions of the book. I don't agree with that. It's very disturbing, but it is part of our history. And if we don't talk about these issues honestly with our children, we are jeopardizing their future.
There you go.
And the future of our country.
This is before the CRT crazy.
The books just have to be taught in context, and the proper context, not revisionist context.
Brainstorm in your groups some new names that may be more respectful to the Native American culture.
What I see these books as, basically, I would say they're like Gone with the Wind for kids. Kids are...
Yeah, wait, hold up. Okay, but we got it. So Little House on Prairie used to dabble. Okay. I shouldn't say dabble, but okay, so I guess that's why this channel existed, was to kind of correct some of the harm done by these books, and the racist depictions of Black and Native Americans, or excuse me, pre-Americans or Indigenous. Wow, I didn't know that. So this YouTube channel, but this is still interesting that they're trying to go back and include this history that was not included in the book, at least not well.
Wonderful for them. And Blacks are discriminated against. They are prevented from doing certain things. They are segregated in certain areas.
In the Little House books, they're very open to people of African American backgrounds, of Native American backgrounds. But I think what Laura Ingalls Wilder, as a writer, might have missed were these larger issues of racial prejudice that existed not only on the frontier, but in the North and the South as well.
One, I've never wanted to criticize an author for a historic piece for what they did or did not put in. I always teach to people that for a book, you have to accept it for what it's there, teach the book from what it is, and then expand upon it as much as possible.
Okay. Oh, wait, well, we gotta do this. That's the whole point. They do a lot with this music, though.
We tend to think of Native Americans or Indians as being this one monolithic group that just thought the same and operated the same, and that was not the case. They were different groups, different tribal groups with different beliefs, sometimes different systems, and they would fight amongst each other. They did not like each other
just like Black people.
So, I mean, into this mix, then you throw African Americans and you throw whites, which were not all white at the time. They looked at each other being different in terms of being of Irish background or German background or, Norwegian or whatever. And I mean, there was, it's not as cut and dry or definitely not as black and white as we tend to look at it.
The Osage Indians figured prominently in Laura's third novel, Little House on the Prairie.
Well, the Osage during French colonization learned how to use the resources of the plains and the prairies and the other environments that come together in Missouri in order to develop themselves as middlemen in the trade between the French and further western tribes. The Osage were well versed at this and very successful at it. They developed the largest trading empire, some say in North America, in the 1700s. They made sure to be on good terms with the United States throughout their tribal history. They never went to war against the United States or the U.S. Army. They believed that this would be a great way to preserve people, land, and hopefully some measure of sovereignty, and that certainly was the case.
So yeah, they made a business decision. I this is interesting. I never thought. Okay, this is an interesting conversation. So this is a beloved series of books turned into a beloved series back in the 80s, where I had to watch with my sister when I had chickenpox or homesick. You know what? No, she wasn't home with me a lot. She was only home. It was that week with chickenpox. It was the week with chickenpox. We both had it. All right, so yeah, but this is interesting. People going back to these book series that are not exactly historically accurate, and not trying to change the book, but trying to add more information. I kind of dig that. I kind of wish more authors or more publishers would do that. I never even, literally, I was trying to find more content than I typically use to talk about Indigenous sovereignty and African American, and how, and then this video popped up and I saw a black scholar in it, and I'm like, oh, let's use this. But this whole practice of what they did was really interesting. Yeah, giving it greater context. Now, I'm not always in favor of that, because sometimes that's just like, putting a cherry on top of a shitty sundae. But I think in this context, it works. It works here. again, I wanted to make sure we highlight the Black and Indigenous intersection of history, solidarity, sometimes not. But so this is something we have to watch as well. Oh, I think that slate piece. Did somebody drop the slate piece that I used to use about? I think somebody dropped that earlier. I think it's the piece that I used to always use about the enslavement of Africans at the hands of the indigenous. Let me go back up. No, it was a different one. I'm gonna find it. Yeah, somebody dropped something else. All right, let's play this though. From Al Jazeera. This is just 3 minutes long. This is the Black Native American fight to regain status.
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, there lies a cemetery for Creek Indian freedmen, the tribe's former black slaves. It's neglected and becoming a dumping ground.
Yes, this is one of the Benjamins.
When Rhonda Grayson first heard about it, she didn't get very far in her inquiries about who owned this plot of land.
And when I received the second call, I said, this is the ancestors calling us, and we have to do something.
Not only did she find the owner, she managed to acquire the land on behalf of the Creek Indian freedmen. Now she's begun work on restoration and an accounting of who's buried here.
Now this is Rebecca Johnson, born July 4th on Independence Day, 1865.
At the recent commemorations for the centenary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, black Native Americans were a strong presence. And as with the massacre of 1921, many in the U.S. and elsewhere aren't even aware of their existence. Some Native American tribes long accepted black members. But in what's now Oklahoma, white settlers judged the tribes civilized because not only did they assimilate with the newcomers in dress and religion, but also in the adoption of black chattel slavery. After the Civil War, the tribal nations abolished slavery as part of treaties signed with the federal government in 1866. Former slaves would be fully integrated and now known as freedmen. And there was full integration and intermarriage.
Look at that.
Ligas Chotu Perryman even served as the principal chief of the Creek Nation between 1887 and 1895.
We know that America Cohee was born in 1888. She is an original enrollee of the Muskogee Creek Nation.
Rhonda Grayson's great-grandmother lived her whole life as a member of the Muskogee Creek tribe.
Wow.
But then in 1979, the Creek passed new laws decreeing that freedmen were no longer tribal members. The other tribes followed. Freedmen would lose their tribal voting rights as well as their housing.
Look at that, anti-blackness.
Everyone should be outraged that this could happen in 1979.
Tribes argued it was an expression of their sovereignty.
Really?
An
Original
1866 treaty with the U.S. government should not be the final say on who was a member of their tribes.
No, you good.
Sovereignty is fine, but sovereignty does not give you the right to discriminate against a people, and that's essentially what's happening.
Grayson, who's been leading efforts to overturn the new laws, sees other motivations.
It's about greed and it's about racism is the core of the entire issue. That's it.
Efforts to pressure the tribes to reverse their exclusionary policies have been successful in the courts. In 2017, the Cherokee Nation was forced to abandon plans to expel its freedmen.
Cherokees are people, and unfortunately in this world there's still people who are racist.
They were going to expel all the black people. I've been reading about this for years.
The U.S. Congress is getting involved, threatening to withhold funding if other tribes don't reverse course. And it seems to be working. Some say they will open a dialogue on the issue. But it is fraught. On the face of it, the federal government is overtly intervening in tribal affairs. However, since a Supreme Court ruling in 2020, the tribe's arguments for excluding freedmen have become shakier. Muskogee Creek Tribe argued for autonomy from the federal government. Its basis, the 1866 treaty with the federal government.
We already
and the tribe won. But it's that same treaty that gave freedmen full rights as tribal members.
Bioma Edwards.
The Creek are Grayson's tribe, and she's determined that freedmen members, both living and dead, will soon be able to reclaim their identity.
All about money.
Shabazz, Al Jazeera.
Come on, Joni.
Now listen, that's called motherfucking bars.
Yes, bars. Joni, it is about money. It's about who don't want to split the pie up. And you'll hear about this fight on the East Coast, over in the Midwest, the Oklahoma and all, Kansas. Black people, we were given we were given tribal recognition, and yet folks are still trying to expel us from that. And you're talking about after, like, people who are descendants of, the products of intermarriage, products of, like it ain't like they just making up an identity. Folks lived among these tribes and had this tribal identity, their whole lives. And to see her grandmother, and shout out to y'all for kind of chiming in with that, to see her grandmother, like this black face, and she's a member of the Creek Nation. Right. It's just amazing. Slate magazine, Indigenous, Enslaved. Let me see if I can pop it up. Yeah. So yeah, I used this for a few years. This article right here from slate.com. This is the other part of the history. Americans' other original sin. Europeans didn't just displace Native Americans, they enslaved them, right? And encouraged tribes to participate in the slave trade on a scale historians are only beginning to fathom, right? So this practice is real. I will say that I'm not, this history will be shared. I will continue to share this history, but I'm not doing this as a means of division or to be antagonistic. It's just, again, the complexity of our past. We've got it. Black people, we've got shit. Look who sold out Denmark Vesey. Every rebellion that didn't go well in black cultures because somebody sold out and told on us. Like, we all have, every racial group has aspects of their history that is not only unflattering but just despicable, and this practice is despicable, but again, it's a byproduct of white supremacist colonization on this continent, and so this is it. But I want to lift this up too. I think what I'm going to do from now until Thingstaken on Thursday, I'll continue to share all types of, like, maybe deeper history, and I'm going to share this article again. I'll read a little bit here before I dip because it's 10:23. I did good today, though. I did good. I was on the struggle bus yesterday, y'all. I feel good today, though. This is I wanted to pregame y'all for Thingstaken. Make sure we center Indigenous people. Make sure we talk about Black Indigeneity. I think we did good with this. So let me read a little bit. It says here are 3 scenes from the history of slavery in North America. In 1637, a group of, Pequot Indians, men and boys, having risen up against English colonists in Connecticut and been defeated, were sold to plantations in the West Indies in exchange for African slaves, allowing the colonists to remove a restraint element from their midst. The tribe's women were pressed into service in white homes in New England, where domestic workers were sorely lacking. In 1741, an 800-foot-long coffle, what is that, coffle? I don't know that word. Somebody look that word up. In 1741, 800-foot-long coffle of recently enslaved Sioux Indians procured by a group of Cree, I cannot say these. I don't want to butcher these names. Monsoni, I can't say this A1. Nabion, I don't know. I don't want to mess it up. Masoni warriors arrived in Montreal ready for sale to French colonists hungry for domestic and agricultural labor. And in 1837, Cherokee Joseph Van, expelled from his land in Georgia during the era of Indian removal, took at least 48 enslaved black people along with him to Indian territory. By the 1840s, Van was said to have owned hundreds of enslaved black laborers, as well as ranch horses and a side-wheeler steamboat. A reductive view of American past might note 2 major centuries-long historical sins: the enslavement of stolen Africans and the displacement of Native Americans. In recent years, a new wave of historians of American slavery have been directing attention to the ways these sins overlapped. The stories they have uncovered through African slavery still I think they mean through African slavery, still the narrative that dominates our national memory throw African slavery into a different light, revealing that the seeds of the system that were sown in earlier attempts to exploit Native labor, I said that really wrong, and throw it to a different light, revealing that the seeds of the system sown into earlier attempts to exploit Native labor. The record of Native enslavement also shows how white desire to put workers in bondage intensified the chaos of contact, disrupting intertribal politics and creating uncertainty. And you can't fall for the white supremacy trap. So yeah, you thinking that you working with Whitey, but Whitey gonna show you in a second, like, oh no, we're actually showing, we're making it, we're creating discord, we're creating disruption, right? Let me read that again. The record of Native enslavement also shows how the white desire to put workers in bondage intensified the chaos of contact, disrupting intertribal politics and creating uncertainty and instability among people already struggling to adapt to a radically new balance of power. So I invite y'all, I know y'all been chatting. Thank you. Thank y'all for Googling the word real quick. But again, this is from a few years ago. Yeah, this is from 2016. This is America's Other Original Sin. Europeans didn't just displace Native Americans, they enslaved them and tried to participate in the slave trade as well. So slavery working both ways. They enslaved, not both ways, but slavery as it impacted native people, and slavery as that practice actually became more pervasive within certain Native tribes, right? Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. There was so much more I wanted to get to, but I honestly, y'all, it's a lot, and I think we covered a lot of good ground. We even threw in some Todd Bridges. Okay, let me see what the word means. All right, it's like, a line of chained slaves, you think? Line of animals, right? Or slave. That's so sad. Thank y'all. What was that? Middle Eastern? Okay, thank you for defining that for me. That's sad, but now I get the visual though. We were chattel, so I shouldn't be surprised if they treated us like chattel. But yeah, make sure you lift up indigenous culture on Thingstaken. Don't just sit there and don't be talking about no Columbus and no pilgrims. All right, I mean, I'll let you out. What I allow from elementary school, I'll allow a cornucopia. I'll allow it. Make sure if you with some uptight white kinfolk this weekend, because I know I got a few of y'all who've been hit me up talking about you dreading things taken. So on Thursday on Thingstaken, go ahead and sprinkle some of this history in there in the conversation. Go ahead and piss off somebody who wearing a MAGA hat. Piss them off. Let them know it's okay. They could be mad while you eat your dressing. They could be mad over cranberry sauce. Piss off a racist ancestor this week. Piss off a racist family member. Okay. Yeah, today was awesome. Thank y'all. I love y'all for the support. Thank you for the bits and the hype train. Appreciate y'all. I'm taking off. I'll be off for Thingstaken. I'll come back on Monday. It will be a Cyber Monday. I might be selling something. Okay. Get ready. All right. Yep. Thanksgiving ruined again. Call it Thingstaken. See what they say. Just normalize using Thingstaken at the table on Thursday. Just say Thingstaken. See what they say. All right. I love y'all. All right. Take care. Bye.